You got the backup going, girl.
Oh, girl, no, I don't got the backup going. I gotta start the backup.
Although we used to नहीं किया वैसे.
लेकिन जो किस्मत है ना, जो हमारी किस्मत है, जिस वक्त हम नहीं करेंगे ना, तो सारा ऑडियो पक हो जाएगा. I'm not checking. No chance. Welcome back.
Hello.
Hello. How's it going? Pani ka Pocha, part 2.
Chapter 2. What's our topic this week?
The topic this week is X-Men.
Ziz. And
X-Men, X-women,
X-Men,
ladies, X-kids,
all in
X-fans,
between.
X-friends, X-family members, X-girlfriends, whatever.
X-umbrella members, everything.
X-umbrella members. Not really. We're talking about comic book, video game, movie franchise, the X-Men, from the Xavier School of Gifted Youngsters.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one.
Now we have a very special connection to this wonderful franchise.
Mm-hmm,
Is that fair to say, girl?
Yes.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Care to explain, elaborate what you mean by that?
Okay.
So, let's start now. Let's start with your first exposure to X-Men in general. What was that like? You tell your love and go ahead and mix it up.
This is how I remember things. I feel like growing up, everything was about superheroes, and it was all of that basically. It started with the Thundercats. Then we had the Fantastic Four, but it never really worked for me. It wasn't my thing. It was not. Something was missing. And then came along an animated series called the X-Men animated series. Remember with the special opening, the girl, whenever the opening sequence started, I was like, okay, wait, where to go? That opening sequence has got to be one of the greatest opening sequences of all time.
It was too much. Girl,
they had one, but I love an entrance, right? Obviously. So they had entrances. Everyone had the entrance lyrics. But what I liked in particular was that there were a lot of female characters, obviously.
Yes. Right? Yes. So many.
So I was like, उससे पहले I was not into the superhero stuff, right? I was more into Disney, let's just say, because of the princesses and everything, and obviously they're very different. And it just opened my eyes to, okay, you can be a badass bitch. And that's where my journey of being a bad bitch began, basically.
I think you're right. Okay, so my first exposure to the X-Men was really funny. Remember the cereal Kellogg's, like the cereal company Kellogg's? Yeah. They have one called Frosties, right? So I remember we got the tiger ones, yeah. So we got them for home. And they had a campaign with the X-Men because the new X-Men movie X2 at that time had just come out. So they were doing like a whole campaign. So every time you bought like a box of Kellogg's, you'd get a little like a dog tag. You know those dog tags that military personnel have of like a particular X-Men. And the one I got was of Rogue. And I was like, ooh. And I was like, who the hell are these X-Men? What's going on? What is this? And then behind the box, they had like superpowers and like girls, right? I'm looking at Rogue. I'm looking at Jean Grey. I'm like, Storm. I'm like, who are these like super heroines and why don't I know about them? Obviously, I got into the movies. The movie was actually the first, like X2 was actually the first X-Men anything I had seen. So I hadn't even seen the cartoon. Okay. So, and Rogue, I was living, because I had gotten the Rogue tag, so I thought it was like some fate thing. I was like, ooh, I'm like this majestic.
I do have to say, Rogue in the movies versus Rogue in the cartoons, it's a very different thing. Not the same. It's not the same. It's not good, girl, because you know what? She's missing the quintessential Southern belle hospitality that I enjoy. Girl, it's like she lost flavor and seasoning.
Yeah, she lost everything.
Yeah.
It was really annoying, but obviously, so I was like really that was my first introduction to the X-Men, and then I got in. And at the same time, I think X-Men Evolution had just come out. I was really
Yeah.
into that also. The
So you were
cartoon.
like, this was 2000s, basically. That's
So
when you
yeah, I
got
got introduced in 2004 and stuff. And that's that's exactly when the game
Well, we had get together. We had got together
I
at the
got
same
together.
year.
And yes,
And girl,
you know what else
was
came
that
out? What came out that year? What came
X-Men
out?
Legends, girl.
X-Men
X-Men
Legends.
Legends.
Okay.
That's where I was getting to, basically,
Tell
because
me
that's
about
what I wanted to talk about in particular. Because it's I would say that's a landmark moment in our friendship. Let's just say that, right?
yeah, yeah.
So this is what had happened. Okay, we became friends. We'll discuss how we became friends at a
Some
later
other
time because
day.
that's an interesting story on its own. But we were already, I would say, we were already friends at this point, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I knew that you play video games, and I and I suggested. This is how I remember. I suggested to you that we should play this game, X-Men Legends, right?
I
And my
never did that.
description was always was from the beginning was like, "Oh, you love it." It's like I was like, when you select people, they twirl. That was my description. When you select people, they twirl. And I feel
And
like
then
people who haven't played the game won't know what I mean, and people who when we played the game would know exactly what I mean.
because but I remember there was one person who had a very particular twirl, and I'm thinking it was Emma Frost. I
Yeah,
don't know
so I
why.
feel there were degrees of twirls. So there were
Yeah.
3 degrees of twirl. Jean Grey had a twirl where she launched into air and it was like a ethereal drop down.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Storm
This,
had a tornado like round. And Emma
yes.
Frost just went insane. She did 3 twirls in a row. Okay.
Yeah.
And then she
She
had
did.
and her like resting pose was basically I would say like कथक का जो वो एक वो होता है ना कथक का जो standard pose होता है कि एक हाथ कंधे पे एक हाथ जो है in the distance kind of thing. It was so bizarre. I don't know who developed these characters, but I live,
Emma
girl.
Emma Frost in the video game was just all sorts of crazy. Like even the
She was
things
in
that she
another
said,
level.
even the things that she would say, it should be a sin to feel this good. And I was like, what the fuck is
It's
wrong?
all sexual, girl. Everything is sexual.
Bobby Drake.
How'd you know about Bobby? And
Anyway,
then,
okay.
sorry, we're
Let's
getting carried away here.
we're getting carried away here. Okay, the game was obviously an
Sorry.
RPG game. You had to make like let's let the folks at home know. The game was an RPG game. You picked four, and then obviously you went along, and there were challenges and everything.
So you want to talk about what we did once we started playing that video game?
I mean, I feel like because we're the kind of people who are just never content with what we had to take it up a notch. You
Mm-hmm.
know, we were like, just holding the remote controller and playing it is just not enough for me.
No, of course not.
I'm not feeling the fantasy yet.
Mm.
So I need to take it up a notch. So
And
it's
for
a
people who don't know, when we were in ninth grade, we were in Pakistan, right? And we were two very obviously queer kids. When I say obvious, it was obvious from the get-go, that kind of obvious. So it wasn't like we had we got a little bullied here and there. There was that kind of stuff happening. And then what had happened, Miss Pink? You want to explain?
okay. I'm gonna paint a picture here. Okay. Eyes are already on us. Okay. People are waiting
Mm-hmm.
to see what we're gonna do. But we don't care.
Well, okay.
We
We
don't
think we
care.
don't. Yeah.
We don't care because of the stunts that we were pulling. We should not have been pulling.
Yeah.
If we cared, we wouldn't be pulling those stunts.
Mm-hmm.
So we're standing upstairs. Okay. The stairs on
Where
the
we would
top.
have our assemblies every single morning. It was that stage.
The stairs led up to a stage. Okay. And it was obviously the entrance to the building or whatever. So a lot of people would be coming and going, but at the break time, it was our stage. Okay. Yeah, it was our thing. So remember the twirls and everything that we were talking about? The twirls that would happen, the moves in the game, they were all very animated. There was lots of twirling, there was a lot of action, there was a lot of hand movements, like there was a lot of happening.
And the only people relevant to us in the game were obviously the female characters,
The
right?
female characters, yes, of course. Yes.
Because you can't fight crime.
If you ain't cute.
Okay. Anyway.
Fight crime if you ain't cute, honey. Anyway, so the twirls and the action was off. There was like a recess time was basically time to demonstrate to the world about what actions needed to be performed by you and I
Mhm.
on that stage.
Okay.
There were
Creative physics.
twirls, there were cakes, there were
There were,
splits,
there were
kind of.
dialogues. And we did that every single day. Every single day without a fail, we would do that. We would
Twirling.
get we would get abused by the viewing public because why not? Right? And we were like, what's wrong with them? Why can't we just do this on and on?
It was,
But we kept doing it, girl. That's perseverance. Is
yeah,
that not?
we didn't stop.
Eh,
I know I didn't stop.
It was a lot of fun though. It was a lot of fun. I feel like I would have done it regardless.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
Yeah.
even like, for me, it was just because I was so used to the whole thing. Like, I was like, might as well. Ab kar lo, itna maza aa raha hai. It was literally so much fun. I remember X-Men Legends at that time it was it for me.
Okay. Let's talk about the characters individually. First.
Okay, okay,
What you feel about Storm Girl?
okay. She's my drag mom, I have to admit.
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. The hair, white hair.
The hair,
It's
the
hair.
eyes,
Oh yes.
girl, they used to turn white. I remember it was with everything that Storm did, it was a show. In
Oh
the video
god.
game,
Oh yes. Ah!
amazing.
It's like
Amazing. And the
she
one in
and
the
you know
movie,
and she
Halle
had the
Berry, no.
also in the game, Storm had the Oprah voice. She had the deep
Yes.
fried butter voice.
Yeah, it's very that.
Psychic fury.
Yeah. Will do. The will do that you had.
It was a very Oprah-esque voice, and I loved
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Okay.
that's my life.
And if you've seen the animated movie, animated TV show, you would
I
know
have.
Storm likes peaches.
She likes the show.
There's an actual scene. This is she's like, the elements command you to hand this child, and then Ro comes over. Lighten up on the speech, sugar. I loved it so much. It was you saw the contrast of one person taking themselves so seriously and one bitch. And then
Bring it down to a two.
the power was kind of connected to the speech, the speech kind of like the speech kind of became more and more dramatic as her powers reached more and more power. So she wanted to, so it started with rain. She was like rain, and then hail. There's like let ice fall from the skies, and then if there was thunder, so and then it was one step ahead, like the elements, the wind. Oh, she was just going crazy. So essentially, everything required her to be dramatic in her speech, and I loved it.
I
It's like you had
loved it. Everything, every time she was on screen when Storm, you knew some shit was about to go down. Every time she was on screen. Especially because her powers were just so like, like they commanded attention. Like the skies would go dark and the lightning would
Mhm.
crash and everything would be like, the rest would do shit. And you'd be like, okay, you're done. But every time Storm was like, she twirled into the scene, you were like, okay, let's go. It is on.
And
I
Storm had the most dramatic changes in costumes, I believe, in all her versions. Because Jean Grey, for example, it was similar. The only
am.
distinction was between Phoenix and the main character of Jean Grey.
Mhm,
But
mhm,
Storm had like various hairstyles, where she had the
mhm,
mohawk, which we saw in the latest
mhm,
Apocalypse movie. That was one
mhm,
of the original haircuts that she had. She
mhm,
had a black outfit. I love that one, by the way, which was in the X-Men animated series before the 90s one,
mhm.
the one with the not so good opening sequence. And with the good opening sequence, I didn't like that outfit too much, the white one, but I feel like that became like the signature Storm outfit, the white
Yeah,
bodysuit,
yeah,
because it was a look, not head to toe white
yeah.
with beautiful black skin.
Even the one, well, X-Men Evolution was
Oh yeah,
the outfit was really good in that because the hair in X-Men Evolution was like Disney princess
and
hair.
she had the cape.
She
She
had
was
the
the only one with
cape.
the cape.
Yeah, she had the cape. And the X-Men Evolution had good animation, obviously. So it was like a lot of fun to watch also. It was like contemporary animation for that time. When the cape would fly and then the lightning would strike. I remember I made so many sketches of Storm because the hair and the lightning and the eyes would just be like, it was a look.
Oh
It was
yeah,
like, it was done by a gay person, obviously.
of course, of course.
Jean Grey, let's talk about her.
And listen, okay, I'm gonna be real with you, girl. I'm gonna level with you.
Mhm.
For me, it's a thing where my mind gets confused. Am I into it because of the superpower or the fishiness? because you know,
Mhm.
I have to say, my favorite was Jean Grey,
Mhm.
and I'm not sure if it was because of the superpower or the level of fishiness that she gave us, because it was
Yeah, it
very
was
fishy. It
super.
was literally pink.
It
First of
was.
all, her
It was
colors
really
were
good.
literally pink. So
Mm-hmm.
that was I was like, okay, this one. I think I'm gonna pick this one. Maybe,
Mm-hmm.
just maybe
Mm-hmm.
I'll pick this one.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
It was really, really, really feminine. Even like the Phoenix Force thing and all, there was like the level of
obvious,
femininity
obvious,
presented by
obvious,
Jean Grey in the video
obvious.
game was too much. And the game, I have to say, was so much better than the stupid movie because Jean Grey was
Mm.
a fish, and the one in the movie, not fish.
What
Okay?
I didn't
So,
like was in the animated series and the movies, she was in the beginning of the movie. Sorry, she was a bit of like a wuss. Like it was very like Scott, like Scott was Cyclops' real name, right? So
yeah, yeah,
Scott, and I was like, bitch, you need to get it together.
yeah.
She needed the Asma Jahangir energy in her.
Yeah.
Like shoot,
No, yeah, it's so true. Even like it was really irritating, and but the thing is, all this stuff was made so long ago, and there was
yeah.
very less conversation about the representation of women in media. So it was very like, so you can't even. But
Damsel in distress, essentially.
yeah,
Yeah.
so but I remember even as a kid, when I used to be like, why?
You know
It doesn't
why
make
I
no
think?
sense to me.
Because I feel like even if that was not the actual audience, but they thought the intended audience was like straight teenage guys, right? And
Hmm.
they obviously saw, they obviously have male archetypes as well. It's not like they don't have male archetypes, but they have the female archetype thing going on, where Jean Grey is essentially the romantic interest.
Hmm.
She's the guy that the guys wanted to save. That's why they created
Hmm.
the opportunity to, they gave people the opportunity essentially in their minds to
To
save her.
fantasize,
Whereas Storm
yeah,
was this almost, I hate to say, like a maternal figure.
yeah.
Like she had the maternal figure going on. As great as the X-Men was, there are certain problematic elements to it, right?
Okay, tell me.
Um, I don't know if you know, there's a theme with the male versus female characters.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because obviously with characters, most characters are written with weaknesses and strengths in mind, and those weaknesses and strengths in some ways reflect the kind of moral argument that is trying to be portrayed, right?
Of
Most
course.
smart writers do that, and I feel
In
like
good
this,
stories, yeah.
yeah,
Mm,
and this is a piece of smart writing as you
mm,
discussed.
mm,
So I find like um, with a lot of the male characters, the strengths and weaknesses tend to be very heroic in nature, like very
mm-hmm,
standard hero in nature. Whereas if you look at, I mean, I'm gonna talk about in particular the Phoenix and Storm, right? Jean Grey
mm-hmm,
essentially and Storm.
mm-hmm,
There's this aspect of it which is quite problematic, that it's kind of portrayed as their powers essentially are, they can't handle their powers essentially. If you know the
mm-hmm,
story, you know what I mean. For example, Jean Grey has powers that have been diminished by Professor X, because they're so expansive that he doesn't believe she can control them, and when she does, she becomes the Phoenix or the Dark
mm-hmm,
Phoenix as destructive force, right?
mm-hmm,
And Storm, when she goes into the Stormlands, the power essentially overtakes her mind and she can't handle the power, and then she basically is corrupted by power.
mm-hmm.
It's an interesting analogy because this is a very old, let's say, stereotype that why women should not rule or be in
Mm-hmm.
leadership positions, because women, power goes to their head, and women are not.
Oh, that's very interesting. I remember I was having this conversation. I think I was with you or with somebody else. I remember, and I was thinking the kind of powers that these two characters in particular had were actually powers that they were too strong. Like you could tell
Yeah.
that the power there was no limit to the powers that
Hmm.
they had. As a,
Godlike.
the main character, male characters like Cyclops and Wolverine and Bobby Drake maybe had something that was a little bit more godlike, but
Yeah.
not that much. But like Jean Grey and Storm, even Rogue, they had powers that were like what the hell? But like the entire time, you're just thinking in every movie, in every cartoon, and in every video game, you're thinking they're not doing the most. Like they're like
Mm,
underutilized because the power that they're given, and then obviously when they do use most of their power, it's like shit hits the fan. Like the whole Phoenix
yeah.
Yeah. So that's a really that's but you know, it's like it's portrayed like that, but it also like very interesting in terms of if you just look at their power as just femininity as a whole, as
Yeah,
like how femininity is this really powerful force that is constantly diminished because it's too strong.
yeah. And
And
it's this kind of, this idea of women being very temperamental. And I mean, unfortunately, people think women are hormonal, the
mhm,
things like that, that they tend to not have control over their emotions slash powers. So I feel like
mhm.
that idea kind of trickled into this. And then our next candidate, Miss Emma
Miss
Frost,
Emma Frost.
was the Hall.
She
Now,
was the
for
hoe.
me, for me, I would like, as much as I would like to say that Jean Grey was the person I wanted to be, like, publicly, I would say I want to be Jean Grey. But inside, you know I want to be Emma Frost, right?
Girl, come on. I publicly wanted to be Emma Frost. She could turn into a diamond, girl. She could turn
Oh, yes.
into
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
diamonds.
Fabulous.
It was fabulous. Her skin would turn into diamonds. And she was like a sex bombshell thing, boom,
Blonde.
blonde, blue liner, everything. I was all
Oops.
about it. I was
I
all
live for her,
about
girl.
it.
But she was the Hall, basically. She was, I mean, like, I hate to say
Yeah.
that was the archetype here, right?
And
Even
then
though I feel like that's how everybody should be. Because no, as opposed to Jean Grey, she got everything done. She got the she got the
Mm,
menses.
mm,
She was basically also either she was co-leader or she was the leader of her group, the Hellfire Club.
mm, mm.
So Jean Grey was not the leader, right?
She Junior was not
She's the leader. She has the menses. Why not be her? Why be Jean Grey?
she got Cyclops and everything. She got Cyclops, she got everything that she wanted. And she did what she wanted to do. She was a bad bitch. Let's get that
Interestingly, though, she was always in a wedding dress outfit, which is interesting.
right.
She was
Why is she
basically in a
wearing
wedding.
white?
She knows she got three kids. You know what color she should be wearing, girl? What color she
Doodle
should be wearing?
brown.
Because that's more conducive to the condition she's in.
That's all
Okay.
I'm saying.
Um.
And then we have the other archetype, the home girl, our home girl,
mm,
Miss Rogue.
Miss
You
Rogue.
know,
Okay. Okay.
Miss Rogue. She was a home
Oh, girl.
girl.
Oh, girl. Okay. She was something else. First of all, she had a hair moment also. Let's not forget. She had the
Love it.
white streak going on.
I was obsessed with the
I
white
know.
streak. I
I
wanted to get
know.
it.
It was fabulous. Before I heard her, I feel like I thought because she's the fashion icon of this. Even though she's wearing that jacket and whatever, but I was just like, because it was the fashion moment, right? She
Hmm.
had the curly hair also, and I like curly hair.
The
So,
big curly hair.
yeah.
Yeah.
And she had that accent, and she had Southern hospitality going on. She
Yeah.
was all kinds of flavor. Y'all come back now.
Y'all come back now.
Come here, sugar. Those are certain highlights. I would say those were the certain
Yeah.
highlights.
And the fun thing about Rogue was also, well, she was the home girl, so she had that masculinity thing in her anyway, but she was the strong one. You know, she
Yeah,
had
kick ass, bitch.
yeah, she was physically strong. That was the
Yeah,
cool thing about her. She
yeah.
was well, not in the movies, but like yeah, in the comics and the cartoons. She
Yeah.
was the strong one. She had that thing where
Mm.
she could lift heavy things and she would punch the bad guys and kick the bad guys. She wasn't like elemental or psychological or energetic. She
And
was that.
she had that scrappy energy also, right? Like the energy
Yeah.
was scrappy. It wasn't just that her powers were strong. It was like she had that scrappy thing where she in the I don't know if you've seen the series, but she always had that situation where things were thrown on her and stuff, and she would be out for a second. Then she would emerge throwing the rock. So I feel
Yeah.
like that's something that, like, that always inspires you as a kid, especially like it makes you feel like, okay, there's always a hope. She was that character.
Yeah.
So that's why she's
And
really cool.
in your X-Men Evolution also she was my favorite character because I was an emo kid and she was
Mm,
the emo kid in X-Men
mm,
Evolution. So she
mm.
always had that relatable thing going
Also,
on.
also, who doesn't want to be a Black Widow? You kiss me and you're dead.
Dead girl.
Yeah, right. I
She
mean,
was the living embodiment of that phrase. Nah, you can look but you
look,
can't
can't
touch.
touch. Yeah.
You can look but you can't touch, honey.
Although there was still the archetype happening here.
Of course, she was a
You
homegirl.
know who I didn't like?
You didn't
Jubilee.
like. I did
Annoying.
vibe. Yeah.
Annoying. Ekto, the outfit was not cute. The yellow, who's she kidding?
For
What was that
me,
fashionable?
for me, she was just like non-existent. I liked Shadowcat.
Oh yes, yes, yes.
The power, cute. It's a cute power. Not very helpful in the comics, although I've heard that her powers
Yeah,
are cooler.
yeah, yeah.
But like in the show and in Next Evolution and in the movies, not
Mm.
that amazing. But cute, cute
And
power.
but the power is quite amazing. Like she gets to travel through dimensions also, right?
Mm,
Because her form has no dimension or something like to
mm.
that effect. So that I think is cool and it like makes you like it's like she knows shit probably. Also, her name is
Yeah,
Kitty Pride.
Kitty
Hello,
Pryde.
Kitty Pride,
Loved
Pussy
it.
Pride, Pussy Pride. Translation.
Let's get into that. She's a fag hag. And she was dating Bobby Drake, who was so gay. But I loved her. Even in X-Men Evolution, she was like this like party girl, and she had this thing going on about her. Like the fun part about X-Men that all the female characters were somebody that you were inspired to be,
Yeah.
aspire to be. Like I would just like every female character I would see, I'd be like, yeah. And all the male characters I would see, I'd be like, they could
Mm,
get it. So for
mm.
me, X-Men was the complete package. What to aspire to be and what to aspire to get.
By the way, the movies, the movie boys were really cute, were they
Yeah, James
not?
Marsden. James
Oh, also Hugh
Marsden.
Jackman. I mean, hello.
I'm more into the Prince Charming kind of a thing. So James
Okay.
Marsden for me was more like,
So
okay.
I would say James Marsden, funnily enough, was like my sexual awakening almost. Because
Oh
he was like, he
yeah?
had that thing, right? He had that thing where it was like, he was hot, but it was also very,
Nice.
yeah, it was approachable. But I feel like
Yeah.
as I grew older, I preferred Hugh Jackman for some reason. It's just, I feel like I just came into my own woman, you know?
Of course.
That's what happened.
You were like the Jean Grey who was like first into.
Hmm,
Mhm.
I'm that girl.
And she was like, no, no, I feel like I'm more fabulous. I think I need a Hugh Jackman in my life. So
You
I
know,
would
even
say,
Professor X could get it. I gotta be honest, girl.
what the heck?
No, it's like he had a bald head, but he had the white jaw also. So I mean, you could kind of get it. But in the movie, you know who could really get it in this? Not in the initial ones, in the
Of
later one, Magneto.
course. Of course.
Magneto, girl.
Mhm.
What's his name? What's his name?
Michael Fassbender, I think.
Ooh, he could bend me over. Topic this is why I don't like the movies. The
Mm.
movies focused heavily on Wolverine, right?
Yeah.
That was, and I feel like maybe that was because they used Hugh Jackman, who was, who had more star power essentially. If you look
Mm.
at the cast, in my opinion, he was the only one who had star power.
Well,
Um,
Halle Berry was pretty big.
but she didn't really. I mean, I don't think she had, apart from this movie, but the movies that she did, she had the Oscar-winning movie, right? And she
Mm.
had a few roles that were good,
Uh,
but
uh,
she didn't able to sustain the star power in the same way. Like it didn't
uh.
work out. Like if you look at Catwoman, that was the case. And
Ugh. Let's talk
so
about that later.
marble, marble skin. Anyway, so even though I mean, you know what, girl, I live for Hugh Jackman. Let me tell you that.
Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
was like it was annoying because I feel like the story lost a lot of its great things. I feel like that's why the movies are not good because X-Men relied on the idea of this team of superheroes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this complexity that came in through the multiple characters, essentially multiple weaknesses of characters that were resolved throughout, whereas the X-Men movies were very focused on Wolverine. The whole arc
Yeah.
of the story was focused on Wolverine. It ended with Wolverine and everything. So that's something that I did not like. So
Why do you think you were that into the X-Men? In retrospect, we can talk about it because I'm pretty sure I didn't understand it at that point, but
yeah,
there was something that the
for
X-Men.
me, anybody who's queer and who
Mm,
knows of the X-Men knows of the obvious analogy here, right?
mm,
Which is that the X-Men it made me feel special, certainly. Just say that because I feel like
mhm,
anybody who felt different when they they came in contact with the X-Men franchise, they kind of came in contact with the idea also that being different actually makes you special.
mhm,
And you saw the mutation as a sort of gift because that's how it's presented in the series. So that's actually came to me in different levels. I would like to say that.
The thing that I find interesting is with the X-Men was that in a lot of situations there was no explanation for that mutation. Actually,
Hmm.
that's what the interesting part was, because in a lot of other superheroes that we had seen, if it's Spider-Man, for example, okay, he was bitten by a spider. If it was the Fantastic Four, they had a cosmic accident and where they were affected by radio waves. There's Superman, who came from another planet. Batman had a lot of money. Wonder Woman also came from another planet. But the X-Men was just a mutation
Yeah.
that could not be explained, and it made people have an have an have a horrible reaction to the people that were mutating, and they had to be put
Yeah.
into a corner, and then they had to be taken into a home for gifted youngsters, which is obviously an
Yeah.
analogy. And I remember in the movie
Yeah.
X2, Bobby Drake actually comes out to his
Yeah.
parents as a mutant, which was actually a very big analogy, I think.
Yeah.
On how the whole coming out thing and the whole queer thing, and then obviously assimilating, and there was this whole like Magneto versus Professor
Yeah.
Xavier. So there was like a huge. Now I see it more. I didn't see it then, but I can see why I was so drawn to it, because there's the whole community. There was a community thing also. There was no explanation for it. Also, it was just
Yeah.
like, okay, this is just the way you are, and this is a gift that's been given to you, and you just have to learn to control and it was fabulous. The whole
Yeah,
thing
and
was
I feel like as opposed to a lot of the other superhero franchises, one of the unique things about the X-Men franchise is that it often mentions historical parallels to it. And there's lots of historical elements, like, for example, in the Storm origin story, it mentions incidents like because she was born in New York, even though
Mhm,
one parent was from Kenya, she was born in New York, and it mentions the civil rights movement and how the unrest began. And then she moved to Cairo. It mentioned the Suez Canal crisis. So, it mentions all these things. And also in parallel to that, as you mentioned, like it had the Magneto and Professor Xavier conflict, which was actually
mhm,
paralleling the MLK, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X
mhm.
um, uh, conflict.
Oh, that's
Uh,
interesting. I didn't know.
So essentially, what happened there was that these were two major figures in the American civil rights movements for the African American community.
Mhm,
And Martin Luther King always advocated the idea that progress for the African American community can only come through nonviolent movements and
mhm,
through peaceful coexistence and through cooperation with Greater America, essentially white community. Whereas
mhm,
Malcolm X, he had a slightly militant approach to it. He
mhm,
saw it the he saw the movement as a movement of resistance and a
mhm,
movement of action, and he kind of also said that he kind of separated white people and black people, right? So
mhm,
he said that there needed to be some sort of either a separate state, or there needed to be some form of retribution for the atrocities that had been committed in the past. And
mhm.
if you look at it in a broader way, I think it also speaks to, like, we've all, like we talk about this, where with queer people, the idea of assimilation
Mhm.
versus having your own identity. And like things with like marriage equality, for example, or like following a binary, for example. All these
Mhm.
ideas are more uh, they fit more with the Professor X philosophy of things.
Mhm.
And so that's why I kind of always appreciated it, and that's why I feel like it had more depth to a lot of these ideas that of being different. Like even in the movies, like you mentioned,
Mhm.
a common theme in the movies was this idea that people always fear what they don't understand. And I think
Yeah.
that was one of the statements that really stuck out with me, because
Mm.
I feel like at one point, when I reached a certain point in my self-acceptance, it was this stage where I had accepted myself, but I couldn't understand why I couldn't fit into the environment that I was in. And so
Yeah.
me, this was kind of an explanation into why that was. And it made me feel fabulous, because I was like,
Yeah.
they don't get it, but I'm actually special. I'm that
Yeah,
bitch.
yeah. I think X-Men had a very similar. The thing is, when I was watching X-Men and like fangirling over X-Men the entire time. I think I'm 13, 14 years old. I wasn't even out to myself as gay.
Yeah.
The whole thing was the whole gender identity thing and being told,
Yeah.
oh, you're. And for me, that was mainly the point of conflict, not the sexuality, but mostly the gender identity and the
Yeah.
way that
A point of
the gender
difference.
expression. Yeah. So for me, there was a huge like, okay, this is literally something that I cannot change, something from inside me. This is just who I am. Like, like when homosexuality came into the picture, there was a lot of like, okay, Islam and a lot of this and a lot of
Yeah.
that. And like there was something like, okay, maybe something is wrong with me. Okay, maybe it's a disease or whatever. Am I mentally unwell or whatever? There's so many things that you read and so many things that you hear. You think, okay, maybe something is wrong. But the whole gender expression thing came so naturally to me. It was always there. There was nothing that had gone wrong. So for me, it was like when I saw it in the X-Men, they were like, okay, there's something that's in you. This is a gift. This is a new, like this is who you are, and you should just take it as uh, a gift. And the whole gifted youngsters thing was
Yeah.
something that really really affected me, and the sense of community that the X-Men had. That was the fun part. It was not just
Yeah.
oh you're like the odd one out, but like oh you're one of many gifted people.
It was essentially, if you think about it, it was RuPaul's School for Girls at the time,
It was RuPaul's
and
School.
if you think about it, what's her name, Gigi Good? She often mentions this, which is a little bit of a questionable statement. I don't know if you've heard the statement where
No.
she talks about that queer people have this gift, but then she takes this gift into the realm of gift slash responsibility to
Mm-hmm.
the artist and to promote their art and to put art out there. So I feel like the same idea kind of extended into this realm also,
Mm.
which I mean, if, depending on how you see it, could be problematic. Obviously, we see ourselves as artists, I think, right?
Yeah,
So for
yeah.
us, it's like oh yes, but maybe it's not for. I wouldn't say there's lots of different gay people, obviously, and they're not necessarily
But
created.
some of the most, I mean, Alan Turing, he was a
Yeah.
scientist. He was gay. So,
Hmm.
he was an artist. He was a scientist who apparently World War I or World War II,
World War II. So he
one of
invented
the world, the codes. He
he
did the
broke the
hacking thing.
Enigma code, which
Mhm.
essentially broke the code for how the Nazis used to communicate, and they were able
Yes,
to end the war a
that one.
lot sooner. Essentially, yeah.
That one.
And they
That
made a
one.
movie about it. The movie was not so good in my opinion, but okay.
There you
uh,
go with the facts, honey. The
yeah,
facts
the
and the opinions.
Imitation Game.
Hmm.
So okay, interestingly enough, religion is a very strong theme in the X-Men because it has both elements happening where it's very pro-religion and anti-religion.
Hmm.
So there's figures like William Stryker who we see in the
Second
second
part.
movie,
Mm.
but in the movies he's a very different figure as opposed to the comic books, where in the comic books he's presented as a evangelist, kind of very extremist figure.
Mhm.
And it's also, you could say, it's a obviously it's a gay conversion therapy
Mhm.
analogy happening. If you see the movie, you know what I mean, that he invents a so-called cure
Mhm.
for
In the movie, in the third part, yeah, the
yeah,
cure is in the third part, yeah.
yeah. So this no so I believe in the movie there was his son or somebody had the power to
That was Angel. So in but that's not William Stryker. I think William Stryker was in the second part, who was basically he had an adamantium lab, and
yeah.
he put like the adamantium in
Oh
Wolverine
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
everything like that.
yeah. No,
The,
what was
in
the name
the
of that
third
guy?
part, I'm forgetting the name of the guy in the third part,
Yeah,
but he was when
essentially
his son was
that guy,
Angel.
whatever his name
Yeah,
was. That
Angel.
guy was actually
Angel's
almost
father.
like a was a symbol for these extremist movements. But you then also have figures like Nightcrawler,
Mm-hmm.
who I think the power essentially also represented faith, because faith in some
Mm-hmm.
ways is it's like believing in the unknown, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he has to enter these realms, and he has to kind of envision something that's not there to enter that space. So I thought that was very interesting,
It's very
right?
interesting. And Nightcrawler was portrayed as a very religious person also.
Yeah.
There was a lot of prayers and a lot of sins. Like for all the sins, he had the tattoos. In the movie, particularly, I don't know if it's the same in
No, it's the
the
same.
comic. Girl, I forgot one of my most favorite female characters, Mystique. I don't want to forget about her.
Oh yes. Oh my God, yes.
Fabulous. Blue or not blue? Fabulous. And I remember in X-Men 2, I saw her for the first time. I was like, oh, what the hell is that? But as the movie went along, I was like, she's my fave. She's my girl. I like her.
First of all, the name Mystique.
Love it.
It's a drag name, right? That's a drag
Yeah.
name. Mystique.
Yeah.
Mystique Sound Medicine. And also Rebecca Romaine was hot, right?
She was
Rebecca Romaine was,
pretty. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, so she had that going on, and I love the like it was a hair and like in terms of the hair and makeup also the movie was really good
The movie
for
was
Rebecca.
really good. Yeah.
Um, and that was such a cool power also
The power
shape
was
shifting.
amazing. The thing is with
You know what
Mystique,
was
it was
really
like,
cool though?
what?
I like this a lot. I feel like she, if you could think about it, it was a very significant symbol because she could be anything, right? She could even kind of like hide her power if she wanted to.
Hmm.
As
Hmm.
opposed to a lot of the other people, she could hide her power, but she chose not to hide her power. She chose to be blue.
Yes, yes, and I remember in I think X-Men First Class they actually talk about this. There is a whole narrative behind Beast who is trying to create the whole antidote so that him and Mystique can both hide their blueness. Um, and there's a whole narrative of whether or not they want to hide it. And Magneto says that if you focus so much of your attention on trying to hide your powers, you're never going to be able to fight properly because a lot of your energy and a lot of your power will be going into hiding your outer self. And I
Yeah.
just think that's beautiful because that's exactly what a lot of us queer people do. We focus too much on trying to look a certain way, and it never works also. No? You can
Mm.
try as much as you want.
We've all made that journey also,
We've
right?
all made that journey where you try to kind of hide yourself and you focus too much on that. And I remember there was this TED talk also about this debater who said that his debate only got better when he stopped trying to be masculine in his debates.
Yeah.
He was like, I used to focus too much on like my hands, or if I was feminizing myself too much, so I had to be like I was like what's the word, butching it up.
Yeah.
But it's like I used to focus so much on that I could not debate. So I think that's really cool. Like
मेरा भी
even
यही प्रॉब्लम है ना मैं भी कोशिश करती हूँ तभी मेरा it hasn't worked out for me I try to butcher
तो
it up
बहुत
also
हाँ, you just need to
बहुत ज़्यादा
stop butchering it
although I
up.
succeed most of the time but you know
That's why you can't do nothing else because you focus too much on that.
oh,
Anyway, thanks so much for tuning in. This was me and she, and we had a nice conversation. Hope you guys
mhm.
enjoyed. We're gonna come back again, maybe tomorrow, maybe day after. We don't got a structure right now. See you soon, honey. Peace.
Come back to Pani Pocha,
Back to
y'all.
Pani
Bye.
Pocha. Y'all come back now.